This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. In the interest of being respectful of everybody's time, I want to go ahead and get the introduction started and get the program going this morning. We very much appreciate the folks here attending in person with us and the folks that are online. This is another edition of our Sterling Seacrest University program where we attempt to self-produce and bring in outside subject matter experts to help disseminate, topical business intelligence that you can hopefully take back to your companies and use either personally, like today's topic, or corporately. This is the first time we've talked about long-term care, and I'm one of those folks that are, rapidly facing this issue for folks in my family and myself. So I'm eager to hear today's program. My name is Doug Reeder, and I'm the chairman and co-founding partner here at Sterling Seacrest. For those who may not know us well, we're a multidisciplinary commercial insurance agency with deep industry verticals in healthcare, construction, real estate, and hospitality, transportation, logistics, nonprofits, and private client risks. We also have a large benefits consulting practice, which works across industries. We're very pleased to have some folks from the Piedmont group here today. Michael Kipniss and David Morrow will be presenting the material and will show us how to prepare and plan for long-term care. Michael's a partner with the Piedmont group, a Mass Mutual affiliate where he trains, develops, manages, and motivates 50 financial service professionals in their Atlanta office. David Morrow is a financial services representative within the Piedmont group and offers guidance to his clients to help them reach their financial goals. They assist families with developing valuable financial strategies and with his knowledge and dedication to the diverse concerns of special needs families. Preparing for the next step in life isn't always easy. Their combination of experience, professionalism, and access to a wide variety of products and services can help you meet your financial goals, estate strategies, and insurance needs. Please join me in welcoming Michael and David. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having us here. Katie, thank you for all the prep work. We appreciate it. We wish you all were here. We have Bagel Boys from Alpharetta, Georgia. So it's only be about 8 of us to enjoy the greatest bagels in Georgia. As Doug said, we're going to talk about long-term care planning, and the discussion will go in conceptual order as to what it is to plan for what we call longevity risk. Statistically, people are living longer. When a couple gets to age 65, there's a 68% chance one of those 2 adults will make it to age 90. And people sometimes think that their retirement years will be 10 or 15 years long, and then they'll pass away at age 75 or 80. But when you live a long time, you might have concerns about outliving your assets. My name is Mike Kipniss. Like Doug said, I'm here with my partner, David, and we will go through a slide presentation. And then at the end, we're going to have 3 specific examples, just so you guys understand how the pricing works for various types of long-term care insurance. Some are advantageous to be used through the business, where a company can pay premiums on certain policies and get a tax deduction. And if you're having a very good year from a corporate standpoint and you're looking to have a benefit that the key executives could take advantage of and get the premiums deductible, you still have time between now and December 31st to take advantage of that. David, I'm going to trust you with the clicker. It's the biggest discussion point of the day.
The legal.
Here's the compliance and legal disclaimers. Discussions about any kind of insurance and financial security. Many of us are saving for retirement. I was in a situation when my mom got older. She developed lung cancer as a 50-year smoker. that developed into brain cancer. She got dementia, and from age 75 to age 77, she spent 19 months going downhill pretty quickly. Back in 1995, 96, 97, there was no long-term care insurance programs out there, so that came out of cash flow. And luckily, our family had enough squirreled away for that. But it was not only the cash flow drag, but there was the emotional burden of taking care of her, selling the house that I grew up in, moving her to an apartment, moving her to assisted living, and then ultimately moving her to a nursing home where she passed away. And that was a 19-month ride where I had a wife, a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and another on the way, and a full-time job. So it was more than just the financial burden. It was the emotional and tireless days and nights to kind of care for her. So it's about the financial storms you're going to weather.
So, as it says here, it can definitely happen to anyone when you least expect it. My father-in-law just passed away this past weekend and wasn't of the greatest of health, but he fell, hit his head, and within 7 hours, he had passed. You just don't know when that's going to happen. And, it could be the accident, it could be the, illness, it could be a cognitive situation. The average long-term care event is approximately 4 years. That would be if it's physically related. You talk about mental, you're talking about dementia, Alzheimer's, President Reagan went approximately 12 years. So you just don't know how long it could be and when it could happen.
Go back.
Sure, we'll do a volley here. As parents age or a spouse ages, these are difficult decisions to make. I sometimes joke, if your long-term care plan is to become a financial and emotional burden of your adult children, then we don't need to talk about planning. You could just become a burden of them, which is sometimes the only plan out there. But as your 30 and 40-year-old children are growing up with their own family and you're approaching your 60s and 70s, that's typically not the ideal plan out there. It usually involves looking at all the assets, what's in qualified retirement accounts, what's liquid, places to live, who's close to these family members, a lot of various concerns that go into these discussions of long-term care planning.
So long-term care define, a variety of services and supports to help meet personal care needs over an extended period of time. And long-term care may involve non-skilled personal care assistance, such as help performing everyday, activities of daily living. To make this interactive, how many activities are you not able to do to be able to be defined or to be eligible for long-term care? If there's 6 basic daily activities, how many do you need to be not able to do to be eligible?
3.
So, two activities, to not to be able to do, and it can proceed fairly quickly. But, it doesn't take much. I think a lot also when you talk about long-term care, people are thinking about worst case scenario, the far end of the spectrum and talking about nursing home, assisted living, but it could be home health care. It could be adult daycare. It could be assisted living. It could be in the nursing home. So it could be the full gamut of things. And there are the six activities.
Ready to get depressed? The 6 activities of daily living, which we don't think much about: bathing, dressing, going to the restroom, getting from a bed to a chair, taking care of yourself, and eating. So 2 out of 6 of these qualify you for a claim, and any kind of cognitive impairment is a 1 out of 6. That's a complete claim knockout. So if you have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, it gets to the point you will not need a second activity. A typical waiting period in a long-term care claim, like a deductible, like a waiting period in a long-term disability insurance policy is 90 days. And that's the period of time that we as advisors will process the claim, write to the doctors that are caring for the adult, get all the attending physician statements needed. So on that 90th day, if the claim is approved, any premiums that were paid during those 90 days are refunded, and then the claim is active, and either the funds that are going to be paid out will be paid to a facility or directly to the client, and they will reimburse the facility if they need it for assisted living or nursing home.
So, independence, long-term care services may help you maximize your independence and ability to function at a time when you're unable to fully be, independent. And I think that's one thing that Mike kind of talked about, is how things can change, and you can sometimes be that sandwich generation, still taking care of your kids potentially. They still might be on the payroll, but then also taking care of your parents. The parents don't normally want to be the burden. They don't want the roles to inverse and reverse, but it can be. Whether they're living with you, things can change as far as lifestyle pretty quickly for them and for you. So, so let's talk about long-term care, where people receive, kind of talked about this. Give me that wide range. I think a lot of people think it's just the worst case scenario, the far end of the spectrum, but people would prefer in most situations to stay in their home. And if they can have the flexibility to be able to get care in their home, that they appreciate it. But it can also be community-based care, and adult daycares, assisted living, nursing home, and then all the way to hospice. So it's really that full spectrum. We talked about the average time that people are in for a physical situation is 4 years, and you can see it progress. But it doesn't take much to be in that scenario. Some costs to look at, nursing home, private room, home health. One of the things that we're seeing, and Mike kind of talked about, one is people are living longer, and two, the costs are going out of the roof. They're getting absolutely crazy as to what the cost is for care. Nursing home, when you break it down, $100,000 a year, $275 a day, you'll see the per day rate a lot of times, but that's some really good care being a nursing home and private. One, they need a lot of assistance, but also have a private room. But to have a home health aide, at $22 an hour, the cost can add up fairly quickly. It can blow up someone's retirement fairly quickly. How will you pay for the care?
Well, the misconception is health insurance does not cover long-term care insurance. Health insurance is when you go to the hospital, when you see a doctor, it is not there to cover the cost of either home health care or a facility. Disability income insurance, which we offer, is there to replace income if you're sick or hurt during your work years. So most people who work for big companies like Coca-Cola, they're going to get a benefit of 60% of their salary, up to maybe $5,000 or $10,000 a month. That's to replace your income if you're sick or hurt. It's not to pay a caregiver. It's not to reimburse a facility. Government programs, Medicare, Medicaid, I'll kind of lop all together. They're really designed for you when you, as a last resort. You have to spend down almost all your assets to be eligible. The maximum daily benefit of Medicaid is $107 a day. And as David just explained in the slide before, that's a far cry from the $275 a day that's needed. It's really a last resort. Social Security is not built for a long-term care program. It's not built to help people in these times of challenge. And this is over and above Social Security retirement income. We're just talking about Medicare and Medicaid, but it's really tied to the ones who are most poverty stricken that would be eligible. And the $107 a day gets indexed about every 3 or 4 years. It's not something you want to count on.
And while we were talking about the $275 a day for a private room, it's fairly nice accommodations. When you're talking about Medicaid, a lot of times you wouldn't want to be in those facilities. A lot of times they're not close. You're going to have options because you're looking at where available beds are. But that's something to take in consideration. So a lot of people throw out, the Medicaid, well, I'll just, either self-fund or worst case scenario, we'll utilize Medicaid. And, one, you've got to spend down the assets. But two, we hear a lot of times, well, I'll just transfer the, assets to family members so I can then be eligible. Well, there's a look back period for it. So that's something to, take into consideration. You just can't on a dime, flip the switch, transfer assets, and then be eligible for the Medicaid. Talking about, some other considerations, savings, liquidating, it can blow things up fairly quickly. That private room, $100,000, if the average, time is 4 years, it's 400,000, that blows up most people's retirement dollars. So when people talk about self-funding, not that many people can truly self-fund it. So why long-term care insurance?
Just before we leave that last slide, you have to pull it back up. The rule of thumb that I see in the marketplace is that if you're worth over $10 million, I think you may actually be self-insured. If you're somewhere between $3 and $10 million, you should probably look at some form of an insurance component to your plan. Number one, when you see the insurance premiums in the next couple examples, it's not inexpensive to buy the right kind of long-term care insurance. If you're under $3 million, and I know that sounds like a big number, you may not be able to afford an insurance program. You may have to just kind of lower your cost of living, lower your lifestyle, and try not to overspend in retirement. So what are your options? Plan for these costs either in managing your budget. We work with a lot of clients right in that pre-retirement space from age 55 to 65, and they may be paying down debt, getting rid of their education costs for their kids, paying down mortgages, and they want to live on a fixed income, and they're not really looking to have an added expense like an insurance premium. So a lot of the plans that we'll look at, and some of them we'll look at today, are premiums that can be funded in a finite period of time. So you could actually have an insurance program in your retirement years and you've already prepaid it. Covers long-term care in your home, at an assisted living, and a full-blown nursing home. And we look for the affordability options. You want to preserve your other assets. We went through some volatility back in March and April. And imagine if you had a parent that was going into a facility back then and you were watching their net worth plummet. And I know we've had a lot of bounce back and we don't know what the future holds, but even rolling back the clock to 2008 and 2009, if that was the year that one of your parents was going into a facility and you were liquidating stocks as they were going down, that $100,000 a year would be even more punitive. So there's some timing risk as well when you have to be liquid. And there's inflation risk of the cost, like David said earlier, of these facilities. I live up in Alpharetta, and if you drive up and down Highway 9, it looks like they're putting Ritz-Carltons up every other block, and these are nursing homes. They're really nice.
Same thing in Woodstock where I live.
Potential tax advantages we'll get into a little bit. Just so you people are aware, certain premiums on traditional long-term care insurance can be deductible through a business. You could use your health savings account and pay the premiums. If you have a health savings account through work and you've been stockpiling cash into that and you have $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in there, you could use those dollars to pay the premiums, which are obviously very tax advantaged at 30% off retail. Benefits are received tax-free if you go on claim, and that's regardless of whether you've paid premiums with pre-tax dollars or not.
Are the company sponsored products
have to be offered a whole group, or is it voluntary, or, I mean,
Great question, Doug. There are no more group long-term care products. So that's a little bit of an aside. There were some companies back in the 90s and early 2000s that would write group long-term care insurance. It would be guaranteed issue. It would be dirt cheap, and they took a beating on claims, and they pretty much exited the marketplace. If Doug and I were partners and we were both happily married and our spouses didn't work for the same company, you could just carve out me and Doug. It is a discriminatory benefit. The company could pay premiums for just the two of us and not include the other 10, 15, 20 employees. And we could deduct our premiums and our spouses' premiums, even if our spouses are not working. Now, I'm not a CPA, and I will tell you to check with your CPA, but it's not for every company. An S Corp has certain rules, an LLC has certain rules. A C Corp can certainly fully deduct the premiums. And I hate to use the word discrimination, but they can discriminate in favor of certain executives. It's a really nice golden handcuff to provide for either a business that's closely held or some key executives that you want to provide that benefit for.
Now, there is a group solution out there that I wouldn't say is focused solely on long-term care, but it does provide some benefit. That's something that, we can talk about. They're kind of more of a hybrid model. So, it all depends on what you're looking to get accomplished. The reasons why to do it is to give that independence, for yourselves, but also for, your parents that are looking at it, give that emotional burden, knowing that your parents are taken care of. They're in a safe place. They're not, you're not worried about, getting a phone call that something's happened. They're being taken care of, and to have that sort of peace of mind, and not have to be necessarily caring for them. You want to care for your parents, but you don't want to care for your parents. So to have that type of peace of mind, not only are we having the parents look at it for themselves, but there are a lot of times when we're talking to the children, the adult children, about opportunities for their parents. Some things, take in consideration, just as, as far as we've talked about, the stories out there are unbelievable as far as, to hear, not necessarily to make you sad or put gloom and doom in things, but things are out there. Things are happening. It can happen fairly quickly. So you want to have a plan, and you don't want to have a situation where you're, a plan to fail. So, asking your parents if they have the plan. I think that's, more and more of a conversation, that definitely we had ahead of time, with my father-in-law just passed away. Not only did he have his will, but he had a letter on the back of the will with, explicit instructions as far as what he wanted to do. We were making immediate action because we knew what he wanted, but to have that conversation, to know where, key documents are, to know what they want, and what their plan might be, and to work on a plan together, I think is huge. But it's not an easy conversation to have. Developing the plan, and then talking to us about what we can do to assist with what you want to get accomplished.
how many carriers are actively participating in this market these days?
That's a great question. There's only 5 carriers left that write traditional long-term care insurance. And before we jump into a couple examples, that's probably a good place to segue. Traditional long-term care insurance is you pay a premium. There's no return of premium. There's no cash value component. If you die peacefully in your sleep at age 82, there's no refund. It's a lot like a long-term disability policy. I've been paying long-term disability premiums for 36 years and never gone on claim. Car insurance you pay, you hope you don't have claims. Homeowners, the stuff you guys deal with all the time. But there's only 5 carriers that write those policies. To that point, Doug, underwriting is getting more challenging. We get questions a lot. When's the best time to buy it? And I joke, when you're healthy. Age 50 to 65 is probably your prime time to look at it, where the premiums can be affordable and you are hopefully still quote unquote insurable. These policies are underwritten. In the non-traditional market, which we're going to get to a couple of what we call hybrid policies, there are probably a couple dozen companies out there that will marry a life insurance contract with a long-term care component or an annuity with a long-term care component. And our goal today is not to pitch one particular product. It's to give you guys an idea of what the math looks like and whether or not, wow, that's a client and the benefit. That's a client I can think of that might want to talk about it. Is this a good place to stop for questions before we go into a couple examples?
Health screening process.
Oh man, high tech.
Health screening process to purchase.
Yes. Thank you, Kathy. Underwriting is typically a phone interview, and we'll have a little fun here. It's typically a cognitive question. So Doug, what'd you have for breakfast this morning?
Eggs and fruit.
What's your favorite TV show?
Law and Order.
Who's the president of the United States?
Trump.
What'd you have for breakfast this morning?
Eggs and fruit.
What's your favorite TV show?
Law and Order.
Say, got it? These are knockout questions. So they're trying to catch you.
And we're not.
And it might take 20 minutes, but they're really looking as if you are trending to having some sort of memory loss. They will write to your doctor, Kathy. In certain cases, if you don't have an ongoing caregiver, they'll set up a paramedic exam at the insurance company's cost. So that's a great question, but underwriting can take anywhere from, I'd say, 3 to 5 weeks.
But if you're in good health,
Solution, it
Yeah.
can change.
but if you're in good health and you have like a recent doctor visit, they would just contact your doctor and
Absolutely.
get that
Yes.
information. Okay.
You know, I hate to say it, once again, it's kind of doom and gloom, but one, you never know when something's going to happen. And we're all one doctor appointment away from something being documented. We're now not eligible for it. So because we're talking about a lot of times insurance solutions, you know, there is some health screening involved, but you know, the cheaper the younger you do it, cheaper it can be, the healthier. So you're not going to be younger or healthier as we go further along.
And there's no issue with using HSA accounts. I mean, that's,
HSAs are absolutely, whether it's an individual or corporate, it doesn't matter. Health savings accounts are fully available. You can either have the HSA cut the check to the insurance company, or you could write the check. I know that with my HSA, if I'm in between a pay cycle, I can advance myself the money. Yeah.
Another question as far as at what age you consider purchasing type of coverage? You want to answer?
I already answered that.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, again, I have seen people in their 40s look at it, keep it in mind, move on. I would say,
Once again, they're younger.
yeah, I would say between 50 and 60 is the prime time because you're healthy enough to get it. I'd say between 60 and 65, that's where the underwriting hiccups could come up. And over age 65 to 69, some carriers are not even in that market anymore. You know,
It used to be that there were a number of carriers and that spectrum as people are living longer and costs have skyrocketed, have really limited down. We're going to look at one solution here, but you know, the traditional long-term care insurance, which, you know, I think a lot of people think about, kind of the use it or lose it scenario. A lot of companies are either getting out of it, or every company that's still in it has increased premiums on existing policies. So there are times when it can become cost prohibitive.
who are the carriers? I mean, Genworth, one of them still? I mean,
Genworth, Northwestern Mutual, Mass Mutual, Mutual of Omaha, and Prudential is still hanging on. I would say that what David was talking about, and not to get into the high weeds, when long-term care insurance was born in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a dozen companies, all of them left the market in the last 10 years. Okay, they were it was being driven by stock insurance companies trying to get market share, like the early days of disability insurance. Claims started to come back, and the stockholders that own these companies said, we don't want to lose money on our insurance deals, so they started to sell off their book of business. We've seen companies raise rates 18%, 20%, 40% a year. The state insurance departments are forcing companies to raise the rates. If you have a policy right now that has a guaranteed premium, hold on to it. They don't exist anymore. If you have parents who have these policies, do not let them lapse.
Please.
I mean, what are you telling folks then? I mean, because that's hard to plan that, right? I mean, you buy it, you budget it, and it's like goes up 40%. I mean,
We're dropping it. That's
Yeah.
the problem.
but I mean, can you lock in a fixed
They paid all these
premium
dollars
anymore?
into it, and then it's gone. So, I mean, that's the challenge.
You've been
And we're-
patient.
I'm a little confused because you said it wasn't like a whole life type of deal. But earlier you had mentioned buying premium or paying the premiums, and then by the time you retired, the premiums were paid for. So is this like a term policy where you just keep on paying and paying and paying and paying until you go in? Or can I pay for a certain period of time and then I have a defined benefit, like an annuity type of thing that's paying my care later?
So we're going to look at 3 examples. The crossover here is traditional long-term care insurance,
Which is what we're going to look at first.
which is what we call our products called Signature Care. You're paying a premium. In the old days, it was guaranteed. No longer guaranteed. The state insurance departments have taken that away from insurance companies. So what your research would say is you would probably want to go with a company that has had the fewest rate increases or the smallest rate increases. David and I are licensed with about 40 different insurance carriers. Not all of them are in this space. Mass Mutual in the last 17 years has only had 1 rate increase in 17 years. But it was a rate increase, and they fought and they fought and they fought. But the state insurance department said, we don't know if you have enough reserves, so you got to put some more in reserves. Okay. Doug brought up Genworth. I won't go down a rabbit's hole, but Genworth wrote a guaranteed issue product with AARP that you could literally sign up without a medical. It had a 5-year rate guarantee, and when that 5 years was up, the rate increase was 41%. So they were running to the lapse rate. I mean, people were just not able to afford coverage. So Doug, I agree with you. I am not going to feel comfortable talking to someone on a fixed income and telling them point blank that you might have to bear an increase in this premium. But to your question, there's a couple other flavors out there that we might find clients that are more inclined to do. So the first example here is a traditional plan, and Clark Kent is David's humor for the day.
Well, I figured I'd have someone that,
Yes.
is fairly healthy, 55-year-old, him and Lois.
Did Clark actually marry Lois?
Well, in this scenario, we did.
Okay. Uh-oh. Thank you, Katie. So this is pure math. We're looking at 2 55-year-olds in good health. Select Preferred is our second best risk class. A $200 daily benefit. Where's that pointer? This is where you can use your pointer, David. $200 daily benefit, that works out to be in a 30-day month, $6,000 a month. We talked about a 90-day elimination period. What is a benefit period? That's 4 years. That means if you go on claim and the claim lasts more than 4 years and you deplete your bucket, you will be back into the self-insured world. If you go on claim right after you get the policy, that would be a finite benefit of $292,000. The premium is higher for women than for men. And that is statistically because when a male goes on claim, they usually die off in 2.7 years because they drive their wives nuts. And the woman has a 1.5 years apiece, and she lasts 4.5 years. That's not actuarially true, but that's what I've seen. That's why you see a lot more women in these assisted living facilities than men.
The other thing is that you don't need to do the same amount. So with this policy, you have flexibility that, so we see a lot of times that the husband's more concerned about the wife. The wife's going to live longer. And, they do a higher amount on the wife. I'm going to put it on his head, but, a higher amount on the wife, and they do the minimum on the husband, and the minimum is $100 a day, just so they have it. And it allows to have, and we'll, as we go down, a spousal discount. But, as we move down, the other thing is that today's dollars, you just never know when you're going to use them. So we recommend utilizing an inflation rider, so it can increase over time. And then with, spousal discount, this is what you're looking at as far as, your monthly between the two.
So this should be some form of sticker shock if you're looking at a $700 monthly premium. Now it feels less if it's deductible. It feels better if it's through a health savings account. But in the marketplace, I do feel uncomfortable if that's a tight number for a couple, with the idea that they may see 1 or 2 rate increases over the next 10, 15, 20 years. So we kind of lead with this. We don't recommend it, but everyone should see this. Now, half the premium is the inflation piece. So you might want to just roll the dice on inflation and keep the premium down. Like David said, you might want to have a lower benefit, a lower dollar amount for the female, because you'll bring the premiums down.
Could you do a lower inflation rate? Could you
Yes,
do
you could flip flop as well.
3%
I'll
3 is?
Yeah, 3% or 5%. Adding to my stand-up comedy routine, it's a great pre-divorce strategy. You get the spousal discount and you get divorced, and there's no way for us to track that you and your spouse got divorced. So I got somebody laughing over here. I actually have a client right now, and they're getting divorced and they're splitting the costs, and they keep the discount because when they applied for the insurance, they were married. That was a joke for anybody who thinks I'm being serious, but there are people who get divorced out there, especially during these COVID times.
Any questions on this?
This is very close to disability insurance. You pay a premium, you die peacefully in your sleep, you don't get your money back, you had the risk protection. Premiums are waived when you go on claim. I have had one client who's been on multiple claims. Her first claim at age 75 was double hip replacement. She went on claim for 18 months. The premiums were waived. She got better. 3 years later, she had a cognitive claim and she's still on claim. She's collected a little over $1,100,000 in tax-free benefits. 2 different claims. Uh-oh. Questions?
Now we're going to talk about some hybrid solutions that can be, looked at as part of your overall financial plan. And we'll talk about some things, but next thing we're going to talk about is a single premium solution.
Let me describe this while David finds the cleanest page. We call this Care Choice One. That's perfect. It's a hybrid life insurance policy. You write one check and you're done. The premium can be as little as $25,000 and as high as $350,000. And it buys you multiple solutions. There's your premium. It immediately gets you a death benefit of a multiple of that. And it gets you a death benefit plus a long-term care bucket to add up to $357,682 of what we call your long-term care pool, which comes out to be about $7,452 a month. Now, Couple things about this that I like. Number one, if you have a client or a business that's sitting on a lot of cash and they don't need the cash and they've got plenty of money markets earning 0.8% and they just want to be one and done, it's a good way to reposition a dormant asset and leverage that with some death benefit and some long-term care.
Was that? Yeah.
This is also an example for a 55-year-old, okay? If you buy this with a company like Mass Mutual, which is a mutual insurance company, you participate in their profitability in the form of dividends. So the death benefit will go up over time and the long-term care pool will go up over time, and you're actually going to build a cash surrender value like a whole life policy. We're going to try to find a page that will give us that.
Lots of fluff.
I will tell you that if you're working with a client that has multiple insurance policies, or you own a lot of cash value life insurance that no longer has its need for what it was traditionally purchased for, the best way to use those old policies is in a 1035 tax-free exchange. I had a client earlier in the year have a old Allstate policy and an old Northwestern Mutual policy with about $150,000 of cash value. His kids were out of the house. His mortgage was paid off. He didn't even need the $650,000 of death benefit that those two policies had. So we rolled the $150,000 tax-free into a single premium Care Choice One policy. He preserved that cost basis, so there was no taxable event, and he jump-started a long-term care plan, and he used assets that he wasn't going to use ever because he really had outlived the traditional need for life insurance. His kids were out of the house, his mortgage was paid off, and they had plenty of money in retirement accounts. I think that's probably the most advantageous way to look at one of these types of policies. So this example shows you that you start off with long-term care of $357 at age 55, and if you reinvest the dividends at age 74, it's projected to be $443,000. Now the monthly benefit stays the same. You get more months of benefit on the back end. So instead of a 4-year benefit at age 55, you've almost got a 5-year benefit at age 74. There's a cash value, and if you look at the first year, you put in $100,000, you've already got almost $78,000 of surrender value. And I'll be brutally honest, there is not $22,000 of revenue or commission in that. That is not the case. This is a very low commission product, yet it's providing you immediately with death benefit of $180,000, and 20 years later, that death benefit is up to $270,000, and you've got a cash value of $185,000. So this is where we say if you don't use it, you use it. What can happen at age 74? Let's say I go on claim for a couple years and I take $200,000 out of this bucket. Doug, you're smart. What percentage is 200,000 of 443,000? Ballpark.
Less than half.
40%?
Yeah, 45%.
Okay. You're not going to see 200,000 come out of here. You're not going to see your cash value go to negative. You're not going to see your death benefit go to 70,000. That will go down. These dollars will go down by the percentage you took out of the long-term care bucket. So it's not going to deplete these two items. So if this goes down by 40%, let's say it goes down to 100,000, and now your wife wants to go buy a boat for 50 grand, you still have access to the cash value, tax-free. You can access 90% of your cash value tax-free at any time. So there's a living benefit. Does that make sense? That was what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Now, David, if you want to scroll up to age 84, just a tiny bit, and we can run this out every year, But at age 84, you've got over $500,000 in your long-term care pool. You've now got over 270,000 in cash and 332,000 in death benefit. Let's just say that the other spouse was uninsurable. Maybe this cash value is their long-term care pool. Accessing my policy because my wife is uninsurable, that cash value is going to be earmarked.
And this was all started with 100 grand.
One-time payment of 100 grand.
So in this scenario, unlike the first one where it's use it or lose it, in some capacity, you're going to use this.
Right.
You know, it's someone that's able to put out, you know, 100,000 is an easy number. A lot of times that's the number we use, but it can be lower, it can be higher. But a single premium where it's done, they don't have to worry about it. They're not having to worry about increases, but there's some benefits. You don't want, just like anything, you don't want this to be your sole bucket. You want this to be one of your buckets or part of your overall financial plan and strategy. But this would be a way, someone, you know, with some affluence that, you know, $100,000 to be able to take care of the long-term care riddle, you know, that $7,400 a month can go pretty far.
I've had clients worth north of $20 million like this idea, and they say to me point blank, Mike, it's leverage and it's just a risk transfer. And it's not supposed to cover every dollar of your long-term care risk, but if it covers 30, 40, 50%, and you're using an asset that would otherwise be sitting in a bank account or maybe in some inefficient universal life, whole life, variable life that you just don't have a reason to need and the premiums are going to be there forever, it's a pretty good way to transfer those accumulated dollars tax-free into something like
Not
this.
just like the whole concept of the HSA account. I mean, I've had an HSA account for a long time and I've never used it. So it's got a pretty good balance in it.
Yeah.
It's all been tax deducted.
This is not fully deductible. David, if you roll up, probably about 12,000 of this is going to
I
be
can't use the HSA account for this purchase.
for, there's a breakdown of this
What did you get?
100,000. I don't know where it is. Of this 100,000, about 12,000 would be purely the insurance cost of the long-term care. And that would be, it's probably on one of these supporting pages, but the top of it will show you the breakdown. Not the 100,000, Doug. It's a breakdown of the pure cost. It's probably the very first page, David.
So you can only pay the insurance cost with the HSA?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Questions on this? Okay, Kathy's got great questions.
You paid the 7,400 even if the costs are less.
Great question. You don't get 7452 if it's less, that just stays in your bucket and gives you more months on the back end. So it's not going to be lost. If it's 5,000 a month, the extra 2452 is going to go on the back end and get you more months, Kathy, if it's a longer term claim. And obviously that preserves more of your death benefit and more of your cash value. It's a great question.
Just X out of it.
Yes.
Sure. Okay. So no,
Any other questions?
you want to go to the next?
Sure.
All right, so this is another hybrid scenario, and you know we like the idea of the single premium, but maybe someone's not able to do a single premium. So this breaks it down a little bit more and gives some flexibility, but to your point, it still gives you that finite time that you're paying on it.
This product is a whole life chassis. It's called Care Choice Select. I will tell you the underwriting is a little more significant here than the first two policies we talked about. There may be a paramed exam, there may be blood and urine drawn, but that's because there's a life insurance component that's a little bit more significant. We're looking at an annual premium of $10,000 and it's contractually funded in 12 years. So over 12 years, you would have invested $120,000. You initially get a death benefit of $148,000, and you get a death benefit plus long-term care of $296,000 right out of the gate. That monthly benefit is $61.85. That benefit will stay the same, but the monthly payout will go up over time. So similar to what we just looked at, the Care Choice 1 example, you're going to have cash value, you're going to have a death benefit, and you're going to have a long-term care benefit. But what we like about this is that regardless of the MassMutual dividend interest rate, whether we pay our guaranteed rate of 4% or our current rate of 6.2% or somewhere in between, you will not get a bill in year 13 contractually. It is fully funded after 12 years. Similar to the prior illustration, the upside of something like this is the mutuality of MassMutual. It's a 169-year-old mutual insurance company, Fortune 100. They've never not paid a dividend, and their minimum dividend payout is 4%. That's great, David. So let's go through this quickly. 12 years is your commitment. If you're a math guy, that's what we would call your cost basis. And a percentage of that 10,000 is probably going to be about 2,000 a year, Doug, is the pure long-term care cost that could go out of your business or come out of your health savings account. Your long-term care pool starts at 296, and at this projection at 12 years at age 66, it's 342. What we like about this is when your premiums are gone, you still have appreciation in the policy. So the cash, the long-term care pool is going up. Your monthly benefit's staying the same, but you're going to have more months on the back end. So to Kathy's question earlier, if you don't use that $61.85 every month, it's going to get you more months on the back end. You're going to have a policy surrender value, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You basically break even after 12 years. You put in 120,000, you've got 118,000. Would be a very bad investment. You would have lost $1,500 if you cash this out. It is not built for a cash value rate of return, and we would never market it that way. The death benefit starts at 150, it creeps up to 202, 247, and at age 84, it's 304 of death benefit, 247 of cash surrender value. You're doing this really for the long-term care bucket, okay? And that might be the year that you need it. So now you've got $61.85 for 6 years. This comes out tax-free. If you don't use it all up, you're still going to have a net death benefit and potential cash value that you could use. Unlike the Care Choice 1, you could actually deplete all your cash value and death benefit if you take all the cash out of long-term care payout.
Now, if you notice the monthly is a little less in this scenario, and that's because really you front-loaded the money with the single premium. So you're stretching it out, but for that client that is not able to lay in, just single premium, this gives them the option of doing it, kind of breaking it up into 12 years. But after 12 years, you're done paying on it, and it's not going to increase. It's going to stay the same.
Remember the first illustration, we showed you guys almost $800 a month into a traditional long-term care plan. This is almost $800 a month, and you're done in 12 years. Granted, it's on one individual, but again, if you get couples in their 50s or 60s, there may be one that can get it and one that can't. So you have to look at other assets on the balance sheet as their hedge against long-term care planning. There are other variations of this, and we don't want to go down any more scenarios today. We want to leave some time for Q&A. Katie, how are we on time?
8:30, so we have 30 more minutes if you need it.
I'm not going to sing, I promise. We can go through Doug's diet again. Questions here, questions to the board?
I think this has been really good.
How much higher are the premiums as you're aging?
Say they go up about 7 to 8% a year. There's nothing magical from 59 to 60. Nothing magical from 64 to 65. I'd say 7 to 8% a year, year over year. You know, we could run a cost of waiting scenario where if you started at 55 versus roll the dice and waited till 60, and we're just as insurable 5 years later, you know, you may end up with so much more cash value having started earlier. So it's a give and take. You know, I've had clients that have been less insurable as they've gotten older. I've had clients who've been healthier as they've gotten older. You know, they've quit smoking. They've lost some weight. Cholesterol's come down. Blood pressure's come down. I don't want to scare you into being uninsurable, but some couples, one is and one isn't. And that's just, you know, you have to address that risk. And I'll spend a lot of time talking people out of these policies if they are self-insured or they have other assets. It's not something that you have to buy insurance. That's why we call this a long-term care planning discussion, not long-term care insurance. And every Sterling Seacrest broker in this room can sell this to yourself and can market it to your clients. So you have arrangement with Mass Mutual and you can market it with other carriers as well. And we're happy to help you plan design and figure out the right way to implement and revenue share if that's something we need to talk about at a later date. But this is a marketable product. Business owners can look at it as a tax strategy. I'm a big fan of buying it because you need it, not buying it because it's deductible. But we try to go through that with the front end of, is this something that's really something important to somebody who would normally go out and look at long-term care as a planning solution? If it's deductible, if there's money in HSA to fund it, then obviously we look at those dollars as well.
And we're seeing more and more scenarios where companies are looking at it as a golden handcuffs, you know, that golden parachute, you know, getting away from true bonuses and looking at, you know, what are ways to long-term planning for you to be able to take some things out of the equation.
I have a question. If you had a client who was, their income stream was pretty shallow, they were tight, and you needed to partner this kind of program with another, what are your thoughts on, and I thought of this because you mentioned Jim Worth as one of the folks that write this. What are your thoughts on pairing this up with somebody who qualifies for a healthy reverse mortgage and using proceeds from that to help fund this? Because you're really dealing with the same kind of a client here. But if their income doesn't quite get there without it hurting, is that something that you would recommend or know, or why?
It's something to have that conversation, you know, as far as that overall plan, you know, because you might have one of these solutions. We're looking at what the overall plan is as far as, you know, what they have as far as liquid, that if there are increases, if there are significant events, what takes place. I'll go back to my father-in-law. You know, my father-in-law sold his house in Mobile to come up to this area to be closer to, you know, his two kids, to his grandkids, and was renting. We didn't have a scenario where we had, he went fairly quick, but more and more are getting away from the long-term plan of having the house and getting away from it and just renting. That might not be a solution. So we've got to look at the whole picture to figure out what's the best scenario, what's the best solution, and talk through it with them as far as, here are the pros and cons of every solution. What do we have as far as access to funding to be able to assist?
Premiums can be paid by anyone. If me and my brother want to pay a policy on my mom, because it's going to be our financial hardship,
Yeah.
anybody can pay the premiums. Now, I can't say anybody can deduct the premiums, but I've had three adult children fund a $17,000 premium on their mom in New Jersey because she had plenty of real estate, but she would have been completely illiquid. And they just broke the bill down. I'll pay the first 6 months or first 4 months of the year. You pay the next 4, you pay the next 4. So the premium payer can be a different entity. That is not a problem. And if you're describing a situation where the 58, 60-year-old can't afford it, but it's going to become a financial burden to the adult kids, then they just pull together. It's going to be a better risk for them to cover the premiums than what if one of the parents lives to their 80s and now they're moving in with the adult kids in the basement. You got to pay to have, ramps put in and wheelchair access. I mean, it can be expensive to make a house functional for someone who can't do stairs and things like that. Like David said, majority of people want to stay in their house as long as possible. So you typically see home health care as the first choice, where you need medication or you need somebody to bathe you. I mean, I had the unfortunate scenario of having to change my mom's diaper. That was not a lot of fun. It really isn't. And you don't want to have that burden.
So many advisors focus on people to make a certain amount of money or have a certain amount of investable assets. Mike and I, one of the things that came up in your introduction was we do a lot regarding special needs planning. I've got 3 kids, 2 of them with special needs. So we're used to having conversation with the client, the adult, talking about, do we have kids that we've got to plan for long-term beyond your life expectancy? Are there parents that we've got to plan for? So, having that conversation to figure out, okay, as far as the overall financial picture, what are we looking at? Mike and I work with clients that it's not just investments, it's this risk management piece with no minimums involved, and people appreciate that because there's still a need. This is still a scary point of interest for people. And a lot of advisors aren't focusing on it because, one, they want to focus just on the investments. I want to get you from here to here and talk about rate of return, and they're not talking necessarily about the risk management piece. And this is huge because when you look at the risk management, that base of a financial plan, you want to have that. It's great to talk about the wealth accumulation and wealth distribution, the rate of return, the rate of withdrawal, the sexy things. What kind of rate of return can I get? How much money can I take out of it so that you're not running out of money? But this risk management piece, having that strong base so that things don't come tumbling down if something happens. This, by the numbers looking at and the cost of care, this can blow up a large percentage of people's retirement. Or, if they're going to start paying for their parents, what does that look like?
Doug, the deductibility of this policy, the $1,230 a year is the long-term care piece. Sorry. So that $1,230 is what you could pay out of your HSA. And the balance would be paid out of, personal cash flow through the business, whatever you want to do. So they'll break that down. And again, I'm not a CPA, but if you want to play one on TV, if you want me to send your tax person what it looks like, there's plenty of write-ups in the code as to what is and isn't deductible with long-term care premiums. That's why we break out the cost. As an advisor, you guys may not have these kind of deep discussions with your clients or business owners, and we're not asking you to vary from your specialty and what you guys are really, really good at, but just be aware that if you're not having that conversation, somebody else might. And I think when we talk about planning for our clients, we want to help them with everything, whether it's giving them an estate attorney, giving them a CPA, or giving them an idea that they may not be aware of, and be on the front line of that. So just be aware that it's out there as advisors and producers. And then for clients, it's not right for everybody, but at least you have a better idea of why you would look at it, various plan designs, and if it makes sense, we can certainly help you work the plan designs and put some recommendations together and work jointly with you guys.
And to piggyback on that, you guys are in the risk management space just as much as we are. And having this conversation, having that one more question as to, what are your plans? Are you working with someone? Because if they're not now, they could be down the road. And that could mean, potentially bringing in another partner regarding your piece. We want to be, additional quiver for you in your overall, holster of things so that you're just enhancing your offering to your clients. You know, our job is to make you look good and, you know, one, give them peace of mind, but two, it's one more thing that can be addressed so they're not looking at alternate solutions. You know, we all know what it's like as far as going out and getting new clients and also retaining. So it's a lot more expensive to get a new client as compared to retain your current and growing on that. So if we can help you as far as retaining, that would be that, you know, that opportunity that we would like to assist you with.
Bring it up during an annual review, or, you know, I'm sure you guys have quarterly check-ins and renewal dates and things that you track, but, you know, throw it out there. A longtime client, you just say out of curiosity, have you addressed long-term care planning? No. If not,
Kathy likes us.
Kathy's the best. What is, Kathy, where can I mail you a gift card?
I've been.
She's one of our most loyal attendees too, so we appreciate her as well.
She's awesome.
But no, this is a natural, you know, extension of discussions we're having. I mean, I started in this business when I was in my 30s. I'm in my 50s now. There's a lot of transition going on with my clients, ownership wise, and
you've grown with your clients.
Yeah, and so
as they progress, you progressed,
and I personally have experience with this. My wife's father's in a nursing home. His mind is very good, but his body is not, and so he's one of those long-termers in there. And had he not had, you know, the benefit of being a public medicine doctor and a pension, the long-term care costs are, you know, I can vouch. His private long-term, you know, nursing home bill was 10 grand a month, and it wasn't the Ritz-Carlton, I can promise you.
and that's the thing is, you know, most people have life insurance. Now, the question is it the right thing? Is it the right amount? Is it about to expire? Yes. Then you go down as far as the number of people that have disability insurance to protect their greatest asset, which is their future income. But then you move along the risk management, the protection piece, and talk about long-term care. Most people, they're concerned about it, but they're going to stick their head in the sand and roll the dice and hope. You know, everyone talks, well, if it comes up, you know, I've got a gun and I got a single bullet. Rarely does that truly where they're actually doing it, but it's rolling the dice. Most people don't have a plan regarding long-term care.
And these strike me as some
Reasonable.
options that kind of cover a big pool of the folks out there.
I mean, it's all relative.
Yeah.
You have a business owner that sells his business, has a liquidity event, you can write a check for 100 grand, not think about it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
before they start going into the pillow business or tiny houses. I have a client who sold his company for 40 million. Now he's in the tiny house business, and he bought a pillow company, and he's like coffee shops, and, you know, people get funny with a lot of money, and, you know, 100,000 is a lot of money. There's no doubt. That's a lot of money. But, you know, before they run down to BNY Mellon or Merrill and they start to get all those assets managed, you could slice off a little bit of risk and
Be done
And to your point, it's a
continue to
risk
help them.
transfer, and, you know, and
with multiple benefits.
you guys
with
see it every
benefits.
day. You see it
Yeah.
every day. And it's not supposed to cover 100% of the risk,
That's
but if
right.
it can cover some of it, they could spend the rest. Go have fun. Don't overthink it.
And it's not in these two other scenarios. It's not like they lose the money. I mean, it's there.
right.
You can always cash
In other, you know, capacity. That's why more people are moving from that traditional model to more of the hybrid, because now you have more options, more benefits with it. And when you talk about it, this is 10,000 a year done in 12 years compared to the almost 800 a month in an indefinite period of paying long-term care where you're, you know, use it or lose it scenario. That's why a lot of people are moving it, because one, the premiums are going up. There's not one company out there that hasn't increased premiums in the traditional long-term care policy or solution space. That's why they're moving it to more of a hybrid scenario, whether it be a single premium or, you know, a defined period, so that they have the option, but in some capacity, you're going to use it.
Are we going to share the program? Can we share your,
Yeah, it's compliant.
yeah, okay. You got your disclaimers in there, right?
We'll sign anything, Doug.
I mean,
Thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael and David. That was great. It was very informative. Please be on the lookout for an invitation to our next program, which is Thursday, October 22nd. It's a lunch program, so it's 11:30 to 1. It's kind of a little bit of a sister topic, given what we talked about today. It's John Murdoch. He's co-founder of Medicare Plan Pros. Will present his 3-2-1 approach to answer Medicare questions for everyone, especially those working and turning 65 or over and retiring soon, or that have people in their family doing that. We'll have limited in-person spots here in our conference room, and we'd love to have you in person, but we'll also have a virtual option. So feel free to do whichever you're most comfortable with. And we look forward to seeing you at a future program. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Doug.
That was great.
Thank you.
Really, a lot of information I had no idea about.
It's amazing when people, we talk about